Hi, welcome back to the Console Xplosion Weekly Wrap-Up. I'm your host, the Historic Nerd, and let's dive right into it. Last week we had Star Wars Rogue Squadron drop, and honestly I'm actually excited for it. I was kind of surprised. I was really worried that Star Wars was going to be something that was going to get kind of burned out for me. And this one I'm actually genuinely excited, and I can say this with a certainty, that this will be the best of the prequels. Because of what they're doing with the story and the fact that it's an expanded universe where they're not limited to the standard character arcs. So I think, honestly, the way this film can go, I think they literally can't screw this up. The director did Godzilla, and I think he had phenomenal insight and visual framing in that film. In this one, based on some of the shots I saw from the trailer, I think it's going to be a gorgeous experience. So I'm actually excited for it, which is kind of weird for me, because I was actually pretty hesitant about The Force Awakens. But then again, that's also because J.J. Abrams kind of destroyed my childhood with Star Trek, but that's an entirely different issue of mine I'm dealing with and working through. But so we have the advantage of that new Star Wars universe being just really interesting, and honestly, I'm kind of excited for it, which is surprising for me. And next up, we have Gamestop actually launching one of their own game publishing companies, which apparently Gamestop won't be involved directly in the creative content of the games, but I think honestly this is probably a move on GameStop's end to try and make sure they have just guaranteed titles for their physical releases. Because without physical releases of games, GameStop has nothing, and there's no point in the brick-and-mortar stores without them. Because I think they're running into an issue here where a lot of games are coming out digitally, and where does that leave a brick-and-mortar store? Out in the cold with absolutely no profit. So this is kind of a creative move on their end. I think if they can secure the right talent and get the right people involved with creating games for them and make them actual draws, I think this has serious potential for fueling GameStop. However, this could also drastically backfire if they make some really bad titles. But potentially, if they do it right, this can be something to inject interest and I would say money into an almost shrinking market, because they've already, unfortunately, the way digital distribution has gone, GameStop is fighting against an entity that has no overhead. They're just paying for servers where you buy it from and download it. So it's an uphill battle for them, and this is probably a pretty wise move in that regard. And next up, we have Dark Souls 3 playing. So if you were tired of getting murdered or killed in Dark Souls 1 and 2, you have a whole new game to get your ass kicked in and just keep playing and fighting. Because that's what people are into. Honestly, I was never into Dark Souls. That genre just never spoke to me. Because I guess it never did anything for me. But some people, it's pretty impressive watching them play. For me, I'm just kind of, but then again, that's kind of me in general, though. Alright, but next up, I'd say to finish out next week, you had the Dr.Strange teaser dropping, which is kind of an interesting move. Well, actually not really. It's kind of expected in the expanded Marvel universe of superhero films at this point, but they have the advantage of it kind of dropping at the right time, with especially Benedict Cumberbatch on board to be Dr. Strange, where they can introduce magic into the Marvel universe and not have it be so weird. Where before, with Thor, for example, they had to explain magic as something that was basically science we didn't understand, which I actually kind of like that. I think it's a pretty interesting thing. But Doctor Strange, that leaves a whole new kind of element to expand and open up with. So, that's a lot of fun there. But I never really read Doctor Strange as a comic, in the comics. So I don't know a whole lot about his character. So to watch this film would be kind of fun. And to me, this kind of falls on the same universe or along the same lines as Ant-Man. A character that was on the peripheral that was popular with some people, but was never really, really mainstream. But I could be really wrong. But then again, I don't really remember there being Doctor Strange action figures all that prevalently when I was a kid. So there's a lot of potential there for it. And ultimately, that kind of wraps up the weekly wrap-up for this week. Sorry there wasn't one last week. I was kind of pretty busy and wiped out with just stuff. So I'll get this out to you. But if you want to hear us talk in depth about Doctor Strange and Star Wars Rogue One, we actually have an hour-and-a-half podcast about it where we kind of talk about it and ramble on about Donnie Yen because he's in it, and Ip Man, and a variety of other topics that are associated with Rogue One and some other stuff. It's pretty fun. So drop on by that, but ultimately, thanks for dropping by the Console Xplosion Weekly Wrap-Up. I'm your host, the Historic Nerd, and thanks. Bye.